Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. So today's topic is nutrition, and we're going to discuss proper nutrition for unpredictable schedules. So we actually having this one as a spin-off from podcast 390 about nutrition, which was titled Proper Nutrition for Sedentary Workers. So in that one, we had somebody chime in with an email asking about how to apply proper nutrition rules if you're not very active during the day. So how do they eat enough to maintain enough energy for the day and even have really good, like maybe evening workout, but then not overeat during the day so they actually can lose body fat throughout the day. So they were kind of worried about if we talked about a normal, quote unquote, bell curve of energy where somebody kind of got up in the morning, they weren't doing much. Their active part would be the middle of the day, and then they were more inactive at night. We would typically eat more during the day and eat less at night because that's the way they were using their energy. Well, for sedentary workers who exercise at night, their active part is actually in the evening. So they were asking, how do I fuel myself properly throughout the day, but not have an excess? And then how do I make sure I fuel myself properly throughout the day that I also have energy for a workout? So that was for sedentary workers. Then we had somebody chime in and ask, that was really cool. Thank you for the information. But what do I do if I don't know what my schedule is going to be like? So there are various types of jobs that are similar to this, but something we could think of would be like a firefighter. So they might go to work and there's stuff to do around the firehouse, odds and ends, but then all of a sudden they'll get a random call, and then all of a sudden there's a huge bunch of activity. They have to go fight a fire, and it kind of can happen at any time. So these would be jobs that are kind of like on call kind of basis, or things that we can't really predict exactly what's going to happen every day. So that's what they were asking about is what are the rules for somebody with an unpredictable schedule? So we're going to talk about that today. So we're going to piggyback on some of the information that was presented in podcast 390. So if I'm going a little quick through something and maybe you want a little more in depth on this, on something I mentioned, you might want to check out podcast 390 for a little more of the in depth detail. Okay, now with all of that said, thank you to those who have sent emails or sent messages letting me know that the new microphone is a good step in the quality of the podcast. So everybody seems to like it. It seems to have cut down on the background noise, which is super exciting. And now you get to hyper focus just on my voice. Lucky you. So, but thank you very much for the people who've chimed in and given us feedback. And then thank you for the patrons of the podcast, the people who are donating some money every month to the podcast. So thank you for that. And the microphone is courtesy of you guys and girls. So thank you very much for the support, and I truly, sincerely appreciate that because it helps cover the hosting costs and other little like hidden odds and ends that even I wasn't aware of when I first started making this. So, but thank you very, very, very much, and I'm glad everybody likes the microphone. And thank you for my brother, because he's the one who got us the microphone in terms of which one was going to be the easiest and one for me to like. Basically, I just wanted, how do I use a microphone that improves my podcast but takes zero effort or requirement of knowledge from my end. So he sent me that one, which was awesome. So thank you, Eric. Okay, now on to the good stuff. So in podcast 390, we talked about one of the fears the person had was if I'm not working out, or if I'm not active during the day. So if I'm just sitting at rest, kind of sitting at a desk, geez, should I just maybe not eat anything? Should I maybe do intermittent fasting or kind of fast during the day and eat maybe only closer to my workout? And we said how in podcast 390 that was not a good idea at all, because even though you're not physically active at this moment, so if you're awake and listening to this podcast, you're already physically active in some degree. So when we think about how our body burns calories, we have exercise. So we know that burns calories. And typically that's where people think are like going to be a lot of their calories burned, but it's actually not. It's actually very small amount. So exercise activity, meaning like when we go work out, so we purposely, intentionally exercise, that can equate for generally on most people about 5 to 10% of your daily caloric needs. So how many calories you burn today is really only going to be influenced 5 to 10% based on your workout. Now, there are workout styles that are more effective for calories burned, and there are workout styles that are less effective. In general, the ones that are more effective for calories burned are actually resistance training, because you create damage to the body, healthy damage, by the way, but you create healthy damage to the body that the body has to then work and fix and repair over the next, say 12, 24 hours. So, and even longer in some cases. Whereas if you just do cardio, like I just get on a piece of cardio equipment and I bust my ass, but really I'm just doing cardio. As soon as you get off the cardio machine, you're not really burning any more residual calories. You just burn calories while you're doing it, but there's no more calories being burned afterwards. So whereas with resistance training, you do burn calories while you do it, but then you also burn calories afterwards. So we've talked about this a bajillion times about how if you want to lose weight, go lift weights. That's going to help you lose body fat for the time that you're investing, significantly more helpful than cardio. Cardio is just what you do when your body's too tired to lift weights or you're not recovered enough to lift weights. Cardio is what you do after you lift weights. Lifting weights is by far way, way, way more effective for fat loss. Okay, so exercise activity equates to really only 5 or 10% of the calories that we burn. Then we have kind of a fancy term or fancy concept called thermic effect of food, and that equates to about 10%. And what that is how much energy we use to break down the foods that we eat. So when you eat food, your body has to put in work to break that food down. So it actually takes calories to get calories. So if you eat certain foods, like for example sugars, don't really require a lot of work from the body to break them down. Whereas when you eat fats, would be maybe like nuts, so eat cashews as a snack, that takes way more effort for the body to break down a fat molecule and then convert it over to an energy source than sugars, which are already pretty much in the energy source form. So certain foods take more calories than others, and even the way in which foods are prepared. So if I eat a whole food item versus something that's blended or powdered or in a shake, the whole food item requires more calories to burn, to break down, than a shake or kind of pre-broken down form of food. So there are actually ways when we diet people for aesthetic competitions where, okay, they're like, I need to get down to where I have six-pack abs, and we can actually choose foods that have higher thermic effect of food, so that require more calories to break down. That actually allows the athlete to eat more food throughout the day because they're going to burn more calories by breaking down those more complex foods. Whereas if somebody eats a bunch of kind of like powder shakes, eats like more simple type foods, they're not going to be able to eat as many calories. And what might be the difference? That might be a 5 or even up to like 7 or 8% difference on extreme cases. But like you could say easily, like you could argue like a 5% difference in food. So if somebody's eating, say, 2,000 calories, that would give them an extra 100 calories to eat throughout the day. So if you have a bigger athlete, that can be bigger amounts of calories. And the more extreme you do your thermic effect of food choices, you might be able to get up to like, say, 6 or 7% difference. So all these little percentage things are kind of like guesstimations at best, but they give you a pretty good idea of kind of what's going on. So those are the two first things we look at, just to make it simple for the what's remaining here, is exercise activity requires about 5 to 10%. We'll just say 10%. Then thermic effect of food requires 10%. Then the rest of our calories that we burn, 80% of our calories, are made up by normal everyday activity, which is like fidgeting, maybe the times you got up to go to the bathroom, maybe laughing with a coworker, whether you have an active job in the sense of like talking on the phone, or whether you're inactive, just staring at a computer, bored to death. So normal everyday activity equates to 20% of your total calories used. And then BMR, basal metabolic rate, which is just the amount of calories your body needs to operate and stay alive, is 60%. So at all times, whether you're busy or not, you definitely need calories because you are burning calories through BMR, basal metabolic rate, which equates to 60% of your total caloric need. So if you're awake, you automatically need at least 60% of your daily calories. So that means that fasting or intermittent fasting is not a good idea because you would be underfeeding yourself by 60% of your need, which is significant. Okay? So intermittent fasting and fasting absolutely does work to take weight off of your body. But if you do it prolonged, you feel like absolute shit. You require enormous amounts of caffeine, and you run the risk of losing muscle tissue, underperformance, under recovery. Everything kind of goes downhill. So, intermittent fasting is one of those starvation style diets that gets you a result on a scale immediately. You feel like you're doing everything great when really you're just making it super easy because you're like, I'm just not going to eat. So, rather than me learn how to eat healthy, I'm just not going to eat most of the day and then eat like complete shit during like a certain section of the day and then call that healthy nutrition. No, that doesn't work. You don't get to do lazy ass stuff in life and have that work long term. Nowhere in life does lazy ass things work productively long term for anything good. So we get rewarded for lazy ass stuff often in the short term, but it doesn't work long term. So that's kind of a little background there on that. Now, if you are low activity, then you're going to have low normal everyday activity. So that's that 20% factor. But you're still awake, you're still moving, you're still picking up a phone, you're still clicking buttons on a computer. So you could argue that that's maybe around 10%. So you're not going to have exercise activity, true. And if you're on like an empty stomach right now, like you ate your last meal a couple out like an hour or two, maybe three ago, you're going to have very low to little to no thermic effect of food calories being burned going on. So it's true that if you're very low activity, you have no exercise activity and you have no thermic effect of food activity. And you'd have very low normal everyday activity. So if you're awake and at work, and even if you're doing pretty much diddly, but you're awake and you're at work, you're going to be burning the BMR. Plus, you could argue about 10% of calories in your normal everyday activity. So that's about 70%. So when doing nothing, we still need to eat, but we definitely want to eat moderately. So if you think of something, if I'm running a machine at 70% capacity, I still need to fuel my 70%, but I don't need to overfuel it, right? So that's basically what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to still eat calories, but we're only going to eat like a baseline or maintenance level style calories. And then you would need to add in calories to adjust for activity. So typically, when it comes to activity, we would want to eat ahead of time. So this kind of makes sense. If I want to drive my car, I have to put gasoline in before I drive. Duh. So if I want to move my body in a healthy manner, it's better for me to fuel my body ahead of time. Because what happens is if you don't, and then you're active, you operate at a deficit. You're operating at a wear and tear, breaking down the body type of mode, where if you're fueled ahead of time, you're just burning off the fuel, you're working well, you're doing fine, da 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 da. So everything kind of runs the way it should. So, what do we do if we have a schedule that's unpredictable? I can't front load my activity because I have no freaking clue when my activity is going to happen. So if I front load breakfast thinking something might happen, but nothing does, then I just overate for what my activity need was, and maybe I gained a little bit of fat, or I definitely would not have lost body fat because I wasn't in a caloric deficit. And then all of a sudden mid-morning came around and I'm like, oh, I don't know, lunch might be really busy time. Maybe I might even miss lunch. Let me eat a bigger mid-morning meal. All of a sudden, then you don't do anything at lunch. Ah, crap, I just overate again. so that's what you want to avoid is if you have an unpredictable schedule, how do you avoid accidentally overeating all damn day? And then how do you avoid undereating all damn day? So what we do is instead of thinking of front loading your calories, we are going to back load your calories. Okay? So after activity, immediately after the activity, at your very next meal, you want to eat more to get out of the deficit so your body can immediately start recovering and refueling for the next maybe possible activity. So is this optimal? No. But is it the best case scenario of a shitty scenario? Yes. Okay. So sometimes how would we fix this? So if somebody says, well, I don't want just the best case scenario of a shitty scenario. I want to know how to do it right. Well, then quit your job and go get a job that's more predictable. Okay? So that's the only way you're going to front load your calories is if you know when they're going to need. So you have to get a predictable job. So if you want perfect, quit your job. If that's not a possibility for you, then you have to go to the best case scenario of a shitty scenario. Does this mean that if we backload our calories and you listen to everything today, that you're still not going to be happy, you're still not going to get to what you want, but at least it won't be as miserable as not knowing what you're doing? No, you can still make progress. You can still kind of achieve all your goals. It's just going to be a little bit slower than somebody who has a more predictable schedule and they can fuel themselves ahead of time. So that's life. We already have a million things that make our results possibly slower than other people. Genetics is one big thing, previous background. So if somebody's been, a wrestler or a gymnast their whole life, and then they get into physical fitness and lifting weights, yeah, they're going to progress faster than somebody who's been dormant and done diddly their whole life. So there are enormous amounts of things that factor into whether we make the best progress or not compared to other people. Well, so let's just forget comparing to other people. How about that? Let's compare to yourself. So if you can't change your job, can you wallow in your sorrow and say, woe is me, I'll never be healthy, blah, 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 let me just eat stupid crap food all damn day and whine about it? That's not a great option. So work with what you got. So if what you got is an unpredictable schedule, work with it. You can still make progress. You can still have the body you want. You can still have the performance you want in your training. It's just going to be a little bit slower than maybe somebody who has a perfect schedule, but that's life. Deal with it. Move on. Okay. so much sympathy today. But what I want to get across is that what we're talking about in this podcast absolutely is worth doing because you can make progress with it. So I'm not telling you how to just put your finger in a dam and then hope the thing doesn't explode. We're actually patching the dam. We're actually making progress. We're actually moving forward. Okay. So after activity, you want to eat more to recover and refuel. You can increase, how do we eat more? So we have to eat more calories. Where do those calories come from? Well, if you listen to podcast 153, How Many Calories Do I Need? Is the title of that podcast. Podcast 153 will tell you how many calories you need per day. You then want to take those number of calories divided by the number of meals you think you're going to have per day. So if I'm supposed to have 2,500 calories and I have 5 meals, that's 500 calories per meal. Okay? Boom. There you go. So that's what you'll aim for per meal is whatever your total caloric number is for the day based on podcast 153 divided by how many meals you're going to have per day as a guesstimate, best guess kind of situation. That tells you the calories to go for. Podcast 33 titled How Much Protein Do I Need tells you how much protein you need. So you do the same thing. You would say, okay, I need X amount of protein. Let me divide that by the number of meals I'm going to have per day. So what this does is this gives us baseline maintenance level goals for a food. It is how many calories I should have per meal, how much protein should be in each meal. So that's what we're going to aim for at every single meal. And then after activity, you're going to say, okay, I need to backload my calories. I need to recover from that activity. So I need to go above those maintenance levels. Do we really need to go above our maintenance level of protein? Not really if it's general activity. The only reason why you need to increase protein would be if it was a muscle damaging activity. So I'll let you decide on that because that's a whole big thing. But basically, if it caused muscular stress and your muscles were burning and you feel like, oh man, I'm definitely going to be sore after this, then that has potential to have muscle damage. So therefore, you'd want to increase your protein a little bit. How much is a little bit? Good Lord, all these questions. But you can increase by 5%. So for your daily amount, and that would probably cover you. So you'll listen in podcast 33, and it talks about the general average should be 0.6 to 1 gram per pound of body weight. So and you listen to the podcast and you find out based on the number of times I work out per week, blah, 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 maybe 0.8 is correct for me. Well, if you did an extra activity that day and all of a sudden you had more muscle damage than normal, maybe you'd move to 0.9 or 1 gram per pound, but you don't really need to go above that, okay? So that's what you're going to do for every meal is you're going to aim for your maintenance level of calories, your maintenance level of protein. After a big activity, You're going to increase calories only through protein, really feels muscle damage activity. And then the rest of the increase comes from fats or carbs. If you don't believe you're going to be active again for 3 to 4 hours after your meal here, post active. So let's say it was a firefighter and they went on a fire call, and I'm just making up things here, but say they typically only get 1 or 2 calls a day, and that was the second one of the day. They're like, it's really unlikely we ever get a third, so I'm probably not going to be big time active after this, so I'm going to choose fats. And the reason why is because fats are slower digesting, they're less likely to cause a momentary surplus, which could shut down body fat loss and or kind of mess up the process you're going for. So that's what you want to go for, is the meal after your activity. If you don't feel like you're going to be active after that anymore, you choose fats to add as your extra calories. If you do believe you're going to be active after the meal, and you're like, well, that was my active time, but we're usually active again, anywhere from an hour or two, or maybe this is going to come up, that is going to come up, then you can choose to have carbs, because carbs are faster digesting, meaning you will refuel yourself faster through carbs than you will through fats. So if you need to refuel because you might be active again, choose carbs. If you need to refuel, but you're not going to be active again, so it's okay if the refueling process takes a little longer, then you want to choose fats. Okay? Now, again, how much do we increase by? That's going to be kind of like based on your calories, based on your goals, based on a lot of individual differences. So it's really hard for me to tell you that. In podcast 29, you will learn all you want to know about fats. Well, maybe not all you want to know, but you'll learn the good enough basics about fats in podcast 29. In podcast 21, you can learn more about carbs. So, how many calories do we increase by at these meals? I would say go ahead and increase by 10% of what the calories of that meal goal are. You can do 10 to 20%. Now, this is going to be a general range that you will have to manipulate as you try this and see what results you get. So, let's say your goal for that meal is 500 calories. That's your typical baseline goal. But since you were active, you're going to bump your calories up. Let's go up by 20%. So that means you're now eating 600 calories at that meal. That's not really that big of a jump because it's only 1 or 2 meals of the day. That's not a big... Excuse me. Sorry about that. I try never to sneeze, but it's really hard to tell yourself not to do that. So I apologize if I just blow out your speakers. But, oh, that hurt because I tried not to. Okay, I'm back. So if you increase by 20%, but you only do that at 1, 2, maybe even 3 meals a day, that's not an overall whole day 20% increase. So it doesn't sound as big as what it might sound like in the individual meal percentage. So if you increase each of these recovery kind of backloading meals by 20%, and you find out, okay, yeah, I had pretty good energy, I kind of feel good, I'm happy with everything, feeling great, cool, whatever, leave it alone, do that continually. If you say, you know what, I've been trying to lose fat, and every time I increase by 20%, I have pretty good energy, but my fat loss is really slowing down, or it's not existent. Well, I would recheck podcast 153 and make sure you're eating the right calories, first of all. And then I would say, okay, well, instead of a 20% increase, maybe I'll only do a 10% increase. That might still give me the energy and recovery that I needed, but I won't impair my fat loss process. So let's go with that. Okay, increase the post activity meals, your backloading meals, by 20% of total calories per meal, and then see how you do. Adjust from there. So it is hard for me to give individual basis answers on a podcast because how much you should really increase by, I mean, that can vary on the time of the day of the backloading meal. That can vary on the person's individual's body fat percentage, what kind of training style they do, what kind of actual activity they do. So when they are active, is it a low level active? Or are they super hyperactive and it's a really big ordeal and it burns a lot of calories? So that's a big difference. We also have the amount of muscle tissue that they have affects how much caloric increase you might do. So there's an enormous amount of factors that prevent me from being able to give you an exact number that would be perfect for everybody. So I would start at 20% and then just adjust from there. Cool. So that's what you're going to basically want to do is listen to podcast 153 to find out how many calories you need. Divide that calories by the number of meals you're going to have per day. Listen to podcast 33 to find out how much protein you need. Divide that by the number of meals you're going to have per day. That tells you how many calories and how much protein you should have every meal. Boom, done. Then, if you're having a meal and it's right after a time of being really active, increase your calories at that meal by 20% through carbs or fats. Fats if you're inactive for the next little bit of time, carbs if you feel like you still might be active for the next little bit of time. So that's going to be our basic rules. Then at each meal, that's basically what you're going to do. So from there, so what about working out at night? So now that we know how to kind of manage our day, so I'm going to eat a little more after times being active. If I'm not active, I'm going to eat at my maintenance levels. Seems kind of common sense-ish. But then the question of, well, what if I want to work out at night? Do I start eating more as I get close to my workout? But what happens if I'm not going to be active at that time? Da, 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 da. So what you can do, that's a pretty kind of fail-safe answer, meaning you're not going to run the risk of a lot of negatives, is going to be using an intra-workout drink. So in podcast 93, we talk about intra-workout drinks, like structures of them and what you should put in them and blah, 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 blah. So if you want more detail about that, listen to podcast 93. But an intra-workout drink is basically just drinking calories while you work out. And it's going to be best used to be sugars. You definitely do not want to consume something that has fats in it, because there's no way in the world your body's going to break down the fats to actually be useful in that workout time. So fats take hours to digest. So if I'm drinking something with fat in it and I want my body to be able to use it right now or in 10 minutes, that's stupid. It's not going to work. Okay? So you want to drink sugar-based drinks. So Gatorade is a great example of something you'd want to drink while you're working out. So if you came into the workout and you're like, well, I wasn't super active all day, so I really just ate my maintenance level of calories all day. I don't really feel like I have a ton of energy for this workout. Well, then do an intra-workout drink of like Gatorade or something sugary. So you drink like iced tea, whatever, like Arizona, that you get out of like gas stations. There's an Arizona Tea Company. They have a drink I'm looking at right now called Energy. And that's something I'll drink actually as a way to kind of just like sneak in some calories for myself. So for example, it has 3 servings in it. Bullshit. It's a tab top can. No one's, opening a can and then putting a lid back on it, or cellophane or whatever the hell. So yeah, good luck with that, FDA. So 3 servings per can would give me 300 calories. So it'd be 75 grams of sugars, which sounds like, oh dear God, you're going to have diabetes. Why would you do that to yourself? But I weigh 260 pounds. I'm going to go lift weights and burn up that 75 grams of sugar and have no problem burning that off. So 300 calories doesn't really do anything for me in terms of negative. It gives me energy, so it fuels my workout, but I don't have a ton of excess. So it's kind of like, when people say like, I want to eat after a workout, I'm going to go home and, eat a pizza so I can grow. You didn't need 3,000 calories in a pizza, you jackass. So that's way too many calories. So what you're going to look for is something that gives you a sense of having energy. And for most people, I would say that that's pretty much certainly going to be around 200 calories for sure. And then more if you're bigger or if you feel like you need more energy. So if you try a drink of 200 calories and you found out, yeah, okay, that was something maybe, but I didn't really feel a ton of energy, then increase that. Okay, go up to 300 calories. But that's what you're going to do, is drink something that's sugary, because that's going to give you energy right now while you're working out. So that helps you have a really good workout, have good performance, and also get really good stimulus out of your workout. So if you're lifting weights, the major benefit of lifting weights is that it causes muscle damage. So then your body has to burn calories to fix that muscle. Well, if you're underfueled and you don't drink the sugar that I'm telling you to drink, you're going to go do the workout, you're going to kind of feel like crap, you're not going to do really well, you're not going to create a lot of muscle damage, and therefore you're actually impeding calorie burning and fat loss. So go ahead and drink the damn sugar, have a great kick-ass workout, and really create a lot of muscle damage. That way your body has to do a lot of work to fix that. So it's much, much, much more helpful to have a 100 or 200 calorie boost in sugars at the time of the workout, so then you can have a multiple hundreds calorie boost in your recovery. So 93, podcast 93, intra-workout drinks, that's what you want to do. Cool. So let's wrap this up. So the rules we have.